never broken. You were just trapped in a story that wasn't yours. I'm Dave Barton, author of You're Not Missing Discipline, You're Missing Safety, creator of the YSM Project and the Consistency Code, and this is Breaking the Frame. And here we don't chase success the way we were taught. We redefine it, we rewrite the rules, we dismantle the systems, the stories, and survival scripts that kept you playing small, and we rebuild from self-trust, not shame. If you're done trying to fix yourself and you're ready to build a life that actually fits you, you're in the right place. Let's break the frame. Welcome back to another episode. So today is actually our first episode back, and it is with Shyanne Tan. And for some of you guys, you may already know her, some of you may not, but you will, I'm sure. Just a quick bio on Shyanne before we dive in. So Shyanne is the founder of Beyond the Sale, where she helps high-ticket closers escape burnout and transition into long-term, high-paying roles in client success. She has over 5 years of experience as a client success manager. We'll dive into what that means in a little bit. And director in high-ticket coaching space. She consults behind the scenes on multiple 7- and 8-figure businesses to reduce churn, boost MRR, and build scalable fulfillment systems. So today she's bridging the gap between sales and delivery, helping closers build real careers and coaching companies to deliver on their promises. So Shyanne, welcome.
Thanks, Dave. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, glad to have you here. And obviously we'll dive into a few different things. Before I kind of let you give, any intro you want to give to yourself as well, just why this conversation is so important to me and why I'm really glad you're the first kind of guest on this as well, is because as we'll explore in this episode, but you've actually been a big major point in helping me redefine my success and kind of getting to where I want to go. And obviously, with this whole podcast, it's all about redefining success on your own terms. And so you've been such a linchpin in that for me that I'm just really excited to have you on here and kind of dive into it and let people know more about you and what you've got going on. So yeah, that's kind of why this conversation's so kind of important and exciting for me.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like when I think back to it, we've known each other for like a few years now, being in the high ticket space. Um, for context, for everyone, is like Dave was a closer and I was the CSM working on the same offer. And yeah, it's just been cool to see each other grow. And now we're kind of in this like really interesting spot where both of us are making transitions and building new stuff. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get into all of that, but I'm very excited to be with you too.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome. Well, why don't we start there first? So let's probably I'll let you explain, seeing as you're the expert in this. Why don't you give everybody a quick kind of breakdown of what a CSM or client success manager is? We'll just start there just because I'm sure some people know, some people don't, but if we were all on the same page, it'll make a lot more sense.
Yeah, so a client success manager or an account manager is what the title usually is. And when I guess if we're talking about it in the high ticket coaching space, you would be, for example, one of the coaches. So whatever, if you're a closer, the best way to think about it is like whoever you hand the client off to afterwards is the CSM, the client success manager, or the account manager. If we're talking about, let's say, like a SaaS offer or an agency offer, your job is to make sure that the client uses the product or the service and get success with it. So, same deal. You're making sure that people follow a certain process to get the best outcomes.
Awesome. I think that's a great description there. And I think, yeah, it's really helpful because obviously it's easy when you start to just know terms to just throw them around and expect people to follow along. But sometimes people just genuinely haven't heard these terms. I know when I was just closing, I didn't really know what a CSM was either. So it's always good just to kind of build that out. But for you then, where did kind of your story in this area start then? So with like being in the CSM role and obviously you mentioned we were on the same offer where you were fulfillment, I was closing. How did you kind of get into that position? Let's start at kind of the beginning of this journey.
Yeah, so I had been running an agency, and that was how I got started in the high ticket space. And then at the same time, my brother, Nick, was starting up his high ticket coaching offer, or he had been running it for, I think, about a year at that point. And I had a business coaching background for a franchise company before I got into the high ticket space. So when he needed a coach or a CSM to jump in and help him scale, it just made sense because I had agency experience and coaching experience, and that was my um, first experience with managing clients in the high ticket space.
Yeah. Hey, I suppose, what was the kind of difference or the similarities from doing the coaching and your agency before and then actually becoming into that CSM sort of role? Like, how did they differ or how were they similar?
Yeah, so in my agency, there wasn't really any coaching happening because it was like I was running a social media marketing agency. So I was helping med spas and other service-based businesses, primarily med spas, run their meta ads. And then with coaching on the agency profits offer, we were helping other agency owners scale up their marketing agencies. So it was like felt very what is it called? It was just like it felt really easy because what I was doing in my day to day, I could just tell them about, and it felt pretty seamless.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of just like I'm doing this and I've done this, so now I can just pass that on to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, awesome. And from that then, you mentioned obviously the franchise side of things. Was there kind of any lessons you learned from that that you were able to bring over into this world as well?
Yeah, everything in a franchise is extremely systematized
Mm,
because everything has to be done within their guidelines. And they give you kind of like a full book of business to follow. So
right.
you're coming in as a franchisee and you have very clear ideas of what to do. And then you get a business coach with it. So coming from that space where it was so structured, and then coming
Mm,
into the high ticket space where it was like, just do whatever you want. That was like really caught me off guard, but that's
yeah.
what brought me now into starting my company Beyond the Sale, because now we're helping the high ticket companies restructure their fulfillment, where it's like kind of similar in that franchise company where it's like very
Mm.
standardized, and then that way you can scale a lot easier.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a Wild West situation, right? Compared to that.
Yeah, to say the least. And like I've been there too, right? Like as I think for like the first 2 years of that offer, that agency coaching offer, it was just kind of like winging it on every call and just trying to figure it out
Yeah.
case by case.
Yeah. No, that's it's interesting to think about the the franchise side and the fact that it came with business coaching and things. Sometimes you forget that this whole world has existed before the high ticket space. You know, you kind of like, oh, business coaching, oh, that's just in the high ticket space, whatever. But it's like obviously it's been around for years. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to think how that's evolved one way and then this has probably evolved another. But I imagine they're kind of meeting. I don't know if that's something you've noticed, like they're kind of meeting now into a middle space or
Yes, I do think so. Like, I think franchises comes with its own limitations because it's almost like too standardized. And then there's so many good
mm,
things about high ticket with it kind of being like super free as well. And it's,
hmm
I think now it's just the industry is maturing where, like you said, it's getting a little bit closer. But I even see it as like there's some commonalities even with like the tech industry,
mm,
we're like way behind, but for
right.
example, one of the main reasons why I wanted to help closers move into CSM roles was because that's one of the big, like most common career shifts in tech is people move
Mm,
from tech sales to tech account managers.
that's interesting. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like just a part of that industry then. That's pretty normal.
It's pretty normal. Like, usually, I think when people enter into a lot of these sales roles, it's kind of like the beginning. And then it's quite normal to make transitions into other areas once you evolve and once you learn more about what you like and what you don't like. So,
Mm.
yeah, it's just a normal part of like career transitions, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting because generally in any industry, any business, sales in the sense of like prerequisites is typically the easiest to get into. Like you don't need to
Mhm.
have like certain degrees, you don't need knowledge on it because you're not the one doing the work. But I think there's a lot of talk in this, especially in the high ticket sales industry, where sales is actually seen as like the ultimate goal. Like, oh, you're in sales, like that's where you need to stay. That success means this. And but it's interesting to think that for a lot of industries, it's actually just the entry point. It's not even the goal. I've never really thought about that before.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think it's just so common, right? Because people want to scale to those numbers that I think we're told success
Mm,
is like that 20K a month milestone. For some reason, like whenever I talk to closers and I ask them, like, what's your actual goal? They're like 20K a month. And then I ask them, where does that actually come from? What would you use
mm,
that money for? They're like, honestly, I don't really know. Like, it just sounds like a good number is often what
yeah.
I hear. I also often hear that like that's what success is in the industry.
Mm,
Which is crazy because 20K a month, when you put that into perspective, that's a lot of money.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's interesting though what you said there. One of the things is that's what success is in this industry, and I think that's a huge story that we get told. Ironically, with sales, the whole point of sales in the coaching space is to help people explore their goals tangibly. But most salespeople have never done that, like you've just said. So that on a sales call, they'd be like, "Yeah, but what's your why?" And who does that help? And but when you ask them, they're just like 20K, like they haven't even thought
Yeah.
of it, right? So it's really ironic. But I do think I'd like to touch on the story of success because I think that's something that they get sold. I think this industry, in terms of like the high ticket space, is guilty of this compared to most other places. Is you're sold such a success story, like this is success if you're in sales, and it's so
Mhm.
strong that it's hard to get out of. When you were kind of coming into this and you were transitioning into the part of the journey we've already touched on, I don't know if you can even remember, but what was your kind of story of success, or like what was your view at that stage? Like where were you trying to go? What did that kind of look like?
Oh, when I first became a CSM.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that was like during COVID. And I
Mm.
remember my story of success was also was 10K a month. I don't know where that number came from. I think it
Mhm.
was just like that was the number that the industry like started at was
Yeah.
like all of these all of the marketing said 10K a month, and I think that just got into my head that that is what success is.
Yeah.
And another big outcome that I wanted was to figure out where to go with my career because I had to to give you some context was like I had dropped out of university like I think a year or a year and a half before, and I had been offered some roles in tech, and then I had the option to start my agency, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go for the agency because I don't know, this is just the time to do it.
Mm.
Everybody's working remote, it's COVID, there's the most opportunity right now. I can always go back to a tech role later, but I wanted to really explore. So that was, I
Mm.
would say, the two things that were important to me was hit 10K a month and figure out what the heck I want to do next.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting because obviously I kind of got into this space around the same sort of time, and the
Yeah.
the industry success then was 10K. I remember that. That was the
Right.
I even remember probably a year or two ago I made a post and said something like when did the goal move from 10K to 20K, because then that's what everyone started talking about. So it's really funny that it just gets put out there, right? It's like I think it's meant to just be a number that sounds so good, but it's still achievable, like in people's heads. I don't know, but
I think so. Like it's they just keep pushing the limits. It's still aspirational enough. It's like just out of the norm.
mm,
But like you
yeah.
said, it still feels attainable because you're like, well, everyone's making 10K a month. That's like zero at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's it. So now let's in your journey then. So now you're in the high ticket space, you're in a CSM role, you're kind of starting to help people grow. Like did things start to shift in terms of like what your aspirations were or your goals or what success meant to you, or did it stay the same for a while? Or what I know it's going back a bit, but like what was kind of the journey at that stage?
I think at that stage, like agency profits was growing so much that
Mm,
I was just so excited to figure out how to make this scalable on
mm,
the fulfillment side. And it was like a puzzle that I really wanted to help figure out. And I didn't honestly think beyond like where I would go after that. I was just like,
mm.
this is what's important right now. Things are moving so quickly. Yeah, when you're scaling, I feel like you're just kind of one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that was what I think that was like my entire viewpoint at that time.
Yeah, yeah. No, it makes sense, right? Like you say, when you're scaling, it becomes a snowball and it's hard to have any other focus, you know. And I think that's a blessing and a curse because you can get so focused on it and actually grow things, but at the same time, if anything happens, you've not been focused on anything else. It can be a bit of a, a difficult situation. But yeah, because obviously I joined Agency Profits as the first closer after I don't know how long you'd been in there, but I think I joined in
Yeah.
2021, like March, that sort of time. So I don't know, how long had you been at that point?
I think I had only been in a few months before you. Like I
Right.
remember starting, yeah, maybe just a few months before you.
Yeah.
Yeah, not far ahead.
Yeah, it's funny because and then I remember like obviously I joined, that was my first high ticket sales role. I was very
Yeah.
fortunate in this industry because I got in with Cole Gordon's team before it was like a placement scheme, not scheme, but a placement role like that was just doing training for teams, and I was like the first individual sale they made. So at the time it was just Cole,
Oh no way.
Mitchell, Igor, and oh, he's gonna kill me. Mate, the setter. That was the whole team, and
Wow.
they put me in, and then obviously Igor and the team and that, and I was with Igor, and I was literally just selling websites for like 50 quid, like that's how much I'd make on a sale and things, and he was like, how about would you like to make like 500 a sale instead of 50? And I was like, well, yeah. And then they connected
Obviously.
me with Nick, and then I did my interview, my like role play thing with him, and then yeah, I was in part of the team, and then I think within like a month or two we'd hit our first 100K month, right? Like
Yeah.
it just kind of snowballed so quick.
It did. I remember the day you interviewed, because Nick had like come off the interview and he was like, I think we found like a great closer because he had gone through a couple of closers beforehand
Mm,
and it just wasn't working out and sales became the bottleneck. And then of course, like we had me on fulfillment. And
mm.
we're like, okay, well, gotta pay Shyanne, gotta make sure that like we have a consistent number of sales. So it was really exciting when you joined the team. I remember that moment so clearly, and it's crazy. It's been like maybe 5 years. Yeah.
It's coming up to it. It's crazy.
Mhm.
But yeah, but it's really interesting to kind of know that that's where we were. And now obviously you're in a totally different place in terms of what you're doing. So
Yeah.
like what kind of happened in terms of like internal? So obviously, there's going to be external things that were going on and different things, but when it came to like you looking at, okay, maybe I want to do more than just this, or I want to grow there, or how did like things start to change internally, like the stories, the beliefs you were kind of holding, do you feel?
I think in that time, I became quite almost comfortable and complacent in the role where I was like, okay, yes, there's things to figure out, but I know how to figure them out. And
Mm.
once we got fulfillment kind of more settled, more systematized, then it became like a year where I could just enjoy it. So I really liked that time because it allowed me to explore life outside of work and like pay attention more to what is it that actually like what do I want out of life outside of
Mm.
work? I've always been very achievement focused. And then I had moved to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So I was fully like restarting life. And it gave me the opportunity to do things like, try a Pilates training, pick up different hobbies, find new friends, things
Mm.
like that. But I wouldn't have been able to do that without like the stability of just like knowing how to do the CSM role, having that consistent paycheck and working remote, that allowed me to, like I said, just explore more out of life.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a really interesting kind of development is when things were building, obviously that's where your focus is and kind of where your kind of version of success lies because you need to focus on it. But then when you hit a point where you're like, okay, things are stable, things are calm, I feel good, suddenly then you're able to kind of go, what else is there? Because I think so
Yeah.
long we're kind of sold the idea that like work, work, work in like not in a bad way, but just like probably too focused on like that side. And then
Mhm.
there's a moment when I think if you don't break that, it can be, I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is just like, well, maybe I need to train more, right? Like you've already
Yeah.
spent like 50 grand in sales training, but maybe I need another one, right? Like maybe I need to do this. And like, I guess for you, I'm trying to think of how to word this question properly, but when the stability came, was it a moment of like, oh shit, there's other things I can do? Or was it like, finally, I've got this in place. I've been waiting for this moment to explore. Like, was that always a goal to look at external things and try different things? Or was it like, oh, actually, there's a bigger world than just what I'm doing right now because I'm calm, I can see it?
Yeah, I think it was the latter. Like yeah, it was like having that calm, that freedom to
Mm.
finally realize like this is the freedom that people want.
Mm.
So now is the time to take hold of it and explore because I'm like in my mid 20s at that time. I have no family, I'm single, I can like explore whatever I want.
Mm.
When am I going to like have this opportunity again? Um, and I think too, like I had gone through enough like ups and downs in work and life that I was just like, okay, there's going to be another time where there's going to be something that I want to pursue next that's going to require
Mm.
a lot out of me. Like I should just enjoy the time that I have right now because this is what I worked hard to get to.
Mm.
But I don't think I realized that until I got there. If that does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I think that's like I would call it like a crack in the story, like the story that you've been told and like you're focusing on, and then there's suddenly like cracks showing, and then you're like you can see through it, and you're like, oh, there's more, right? Like it's not just this one thing that I thought it was.
Yeah, exactly. It's like and also it had nothing to do with really the number. It was like I had hit
Mhm.
10K a month like years before that. And that did not bring me like the level of success.
Mhm.
There was like, yeah, I think a lot of limiting beliefs that had to get worked on as well to bring me
Mhm.
out of that like survival mode because you can
Yeah.
have like those big months and you can have those key milestones that you hit, but a lot of the time even when you have those achievements like you don't actually feel very fulfilled.
Mm. Yeah. I think you said something really interesting, so I was just making notes so I don't forget. Um, I think that's really important is the limiting beliefs that people hold that feel like growth. I think that's the trap. So like I need
Mm.
to hit 10k a month. I need to hit 10k a month. And actually like there's no reason why 10k needs to be the goal or the limit. It's just suddenly but that's like such a limiting belief because if you look at it from any way, like you could say, oh well you could make more money, but from a different point of view, what it does is it focuses you on a result rather than like an input. And from what you've kind of explained so far, it felt like the story shift was away from like a result of like 10k a month and suddenly into like, oh, let's try this Pilates thing, let's try this, let's do this, which I would call inputs, right? Like it's focusing on the what I can do, not what I need to achieve. Um, but I
Yeah.
think survival, you mentioned that as well. I think that leads to that way of thinking. So was there like a moment where you noticed survival mode like limiting beliefs, or was this like a journey over a while and then, it's just kind of it built upon itself, do you think?
Hmm. I think it was actually, yeah, like a specific moment. I remember I was sitting in my apartment in KL and I it was like a super normal night, like nothing crazy, honestly. I was sitting there watching TV and my friends had just left and it was like a really nice evening. And I just remember being like, man, this is the dream that I wanted.
Mm,
And it's super simple things of just like I wanted good people around me and I like had just spent a great night with my friends. I have had security in my life that I didn't realize I had and I wasn't really like paying attention to. Nothing had
mm,
changed in that moment in terms of how much money I had made that month. It was just
yeah.
like the gratitude and realizing like I have this I have security and I will continue to create security for myself in any other ways because there haven't been like I've always been able to figure it out. So like I will
Mm,
continue to figure it out and I don't need to have this fear of like, but what if something happens and
mm,
and what if this and what if that?
yeah.
So that was such a shift for me that night because from then it just allowed me to then think about like okay, knowing that I have this level of safety and security and that I will always like create that for myself,
Mm,
what do I actually want to do? Like um and it just opened up all of these possibilities and that was when I really started to think about like would I want to jump back into entrepreneurship, and if I
mm,
do, this time is not going to be just about hitting numbers or scaling to a certain milestone, because that's what I had run two businesses before that and that was what it was all about. This time I was like the money will come if I'm just doing something that I really like and that I can do long term. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So it's like it's almost like that safety, isn't it? It's that when you can kind of look and build from safety rather than survival, suddenly like the world opens back up and you're like, I could do like even if I try something and it fails, I know that I've got my own back, like I can figure this out. And I think that's such a
Yeah.
more like I don't know, empowering way to live than just hustling because you're scared that if you don't hit a number, you failed. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, like now whenever I make decisions, it's all about like what's the downside here?
Mm,
And what's the safety net? Because
mm,
let's say if everything like let's say my world, I don't know, something happened with this business tomorrow, knock on wood, it doesn't. But like, let's say everything shut down. Um, the worst that happens is like I would go back to running a marketing agency for a while, or I
mm,
would go back to being a CSM or a CS
mm,
director, you know?
mm.
And I think for a lot of closers, when they're like trying to decide, should I try something different? It's like you already know you're really unhappy doing this. So, like, this is literally the worst that your life gets. If you try something and you don't like it, you go back to closing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great way to look at it. So let's shift the conversation to that for a minute then. So
Sure.
for people in that position, so like closers who are not enjoying where they're at and they're struggling because obviously the I mean you can speak to this more, but from obviously our conversations and from what I've seen you've been doing with Beyond the Sale and things, it's almost like a lot of the closers out there don't realize there's something else other than closing. Right. And it's like, that's all that my goal is. Maybe I'll become a sales manager and then maybe I'll become a sales trainer. Like that seems to be the ladder that's sold in this industry.
Yeah.
So for people who are like, in that point where they're maybe in survival mode, they know what they're doing now, but they're not even thinking there is something better. They're just like, I don't like this. I'm not enjoying myself. Like, what would you say to those sort of people, or what do you say to the people in that position, and how can you or how can we help them kind of break some of that story?
Yeah, I think like the first thing is just getting clear on what do you want out of life, like even just outside of your closing role. Um, because I think like you just get, even me running this, I have gotten sucked into the sales and marketing of high ticket closing.
Mm,
And it's such strong narratives. There's so much marketing everywhere. It kind of like you almost just have to step back and figure out like screw the industry. What do I want out of my life? And it might be just you don't want that 20K a month. You want like a simple lifestyle where you have that remote freedom, you have like a consistent amount of money coming in. And then you figure out from there like what is it that you actually want to be doing. um and then I think just like how with closing, how you can jump onto different offers that like align with your interests. Like for you, being on that ADHD offer is amazing. It's so
mhm.
perfect.
Yeah.
Then it's like starting to look at, okay, what are those offers that align with your interests that you would like to coach on, for example? That's like the
Mm,
fun part of the high ticket coaching industry. And
yeah.
I think too, it's like viewing it as CSM can be a stepping stone into something that's next. It doesn't have to be like whatever decision you make doesn't mean that you're locked into this career for the next 5 years. It can be like you're CSM for a year. You
Mhm,
step into the industry that you really like, and then you can move into other roles from there. Let's say you want to explore more marketing or more operations. Doing that jump from CSM is a lot easier because you have to interact with so many different parts of the company.
mm,
But to summarize that, essentially, I would start by just figuring out like, yeah, what is it that you really desire? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And then starting to find options that align with that. And I think like
mm.
even when you and I worked together on that part of it, we realized that you just wanted more peace. Like
Yeah.
that was what it came down to, was you wanted
Yeah.
peace and security. And it was easy to find that once we understood what you wanted.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I think so many times the marketing, like you said, is so strong in this industry because I think it's because the type of people it's marketing to, obviously, are like salespeople who brand themselves as high achievers, high performers. So then what they do constantly in the marketing is raise the bar of what high performance looks like and then make you chase that rather than allowing people to go, well, what do you actually want? Like you said, right? For me, every time I've ever looked at like what do I actually want, peace has always been the top thing. And when if your goal is something like peace and you're in a role that is constantly making you feel like you're in survival mode, like no matter what you do, you'll never hit that goal. And that was what I had to
Yeah.
realize was like I was in survival mode every time. I loved helping people, which is what I believe I was doing in sales, and I believe most people in sales are genuine. They're not there to make a sale, they're there to help people, but then you have to make a sale. But that was what I wanted to do. But I was actually constantly in survival mode and chasing that success rather than like my success. And I think that's where my disconnect was. But
Mm.
until I actually spoke to you about what a CSM is, what you were building at the time and what you've built now and where you're trying to go with it all, I'd never known there was another place I could go. And I think that's a shift for a lot of salespeople. It's like they don't even know this is a thing. Like they don't even know that's a role. They don't know how well you can get paid in this role. They don't know what your hours are like in this role. They don't know what your role is in this. Like there's so much unknowns. All they know is the people that they see day to day are like selling their programs saying you can make 20K a month, 40K a month, do this. Like my clients did it. But not one of them is saying like you're going to be fulfilled. You're going to find your version of success. You're going to have peace, security. It's all just this. And I think when I spoke to you and I was like, hang on, like I can make the same money working less hours and actually enjoying myself. And I was like, well, what am I doing? So, but I don't think people know
Yeah.
that, right? And I think that's why I love what you're doing because I think you're exposing a part of the industry that's desperately needed. And I think I'd like you to speak to that as well. The fact that without CSMs, the whole high ticket industry would just fall apart. Because if you're selling something that can't be fulfilled, that can only go on for so long. So, but I think I'd love you to speak on, if you don't mind, is a little bit about the ins and outs of a CSM. Like for people who were like me, who don't even really know, like they know that when they make a sale, it goes to someone, but they don't
Yeah.
really know
This
anything about that.
mysterious thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we call it fulfillment, right? It goes to that's fulfillment's problem. That's all we know, right? So, like, I'd love
totally.
just to talk about that a little bit and kind of what's possible in there, what's normal, what you're bringing to the table with it all, and then we'll kind of explore a little bit of that shift as well.
Yeah, definitely. So as a CSM, usually what if we're talking like high ticket, I'll just talk about high ticket coaching because that's probably most
Mhm,
people's experience or will be. It's you're usually the person doing the coaching.
mhm,
Whether you're an accountability coach or seen as more of like an expert coach, but you're coaching in some aspect. So if your offer includes like bi-weekly coaching calls, you're the one to do those bi-weekly coaching calls.
mhm,
Sometimes you do like group calls. A lot of the time you're doing like onboardings, generating testimonials, handling refunds, making sure that you are messaging and engaging with the clients and that they are actually going through the program. I think that's like a
mhm.
big part of it. It's just maintaining engagement from the person so that they actually work on the program and then they see results. So that's your role as a CSM is I think it's great for people like yourself who was like you got into closing because you wanted to help people. Like this is you can't get closer to helping people than this because you are their coach.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the huge part is for anyone that is selling and is wanting to make a difference to people. What I found, and this was my version, but obviously, everyone has their own take. But what I realized with closing is I wasn't helping them change their life. I was helping them make one decision and then leaving them to it. And that's when I realized like that's why I'm not aligned with this. Is like you get people so emotional to the point where they're like, yeah, I really want to change this. And then you're like, cool, let's change it. 10 grand, please. Right. And then they buy. And then you go, see you later. Right. And then it's like, cool, on
Yeah.
to the next. And it's like, have you actually helped that person change their life? In reality, it depends on if that person's aligned with what you've sold and if the fulfillment's any good. If those two things aren't there, you've all you've done is made them make a decision because they were emotional. Like you've not actually helped that person. And so much of sales marketing is, you've got to challenge their limiting beliefs and you've got to overcome this and you'll change their life. And it's like, dude, you're probably not for the majority. You're probably just making them enough to get the money from them. When I stepped
Mm.
into the CSM role, just from personal experience, now I'm actually helping them change their life week by week because I'm the one that actually has to help them not only overcome limiting beliefs, but stick to the new ones and build new habits. And like, And that's not difficult when you've got a good offer because most of the work's already done for you. You're just there to implement it. Like you're not coming up with it. Like you've not got to build this new system. The offer owner's already done that. The salesperson's
Yes,
already got them to say yes. Like your role is literally just like you've paid for this. Let's actually use it.
let's do it.
Right. And
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's
Like your
important.
job is just to get them through it and to get them to use the systems and the processes that are given and that are there.
Yeah.
And I also really like what you said there. I can't remember, but like basically with the industry, there's so many I think a lot of us are like unhappy with how it's such a sales and marketing game. Like we're like, man, these guarantees, the pressure that we have to put
Mhm.
on the sales on and the tactics, I guess, that a lot of closers have, the pressure that comes from the founders. I think
Mhm.
it all stems from really honestly this same place of having good delivery. It pays in so many different ways. Even if it's like, even if like let's just pay attention to like financially, with like a really good strong fulfillment system, you have less refunds, you have more referrals, you have more upsells, more renewals, like more testimonials. Everything gets easier for every part of the company if it's a good fulfillment. And like the problem that I see in the industry at the moment is there's so many people on the closing side. Like,
Mhm.
and it's like a, it's also not great for the closers because it's like a red ocean where you feel like you're all fighting for roles and you can get kicked off of an offer and replaced like the next day because there's no shortage of closers or setters, but there's a huge shortage of CSMs where like every time I tried to leave a CSM role, I literally felt like I couldn't because we couldn't find replacements. The
Mhm.
last role that I left, it took I had given 4 weeks notice. So first of all, 4 weeks, right? Like a closer, I think usually like quits very quickly or like
Yeah.
gives 2 weeks max. So
Mhm.
I gave 4 weeks and then I ended up having to stay 6 weeks because they didn't have a replacement trained up. So you can just kind of see that gap there of there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to make a big difference in the industry and to make a
Yeah.
big difference in like people's lives because I think online education isn't going anywhere. Like I think it's becoming more and more valuable, if anything. But we need people who like can actually fulfill it. And that will help again, like it'll make everything way easier for the founders, for the closers, setters, everyone.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the most important part is, like you say, is that fulfillment side and being able to be part of that. And you are building a whole nother skill set with all that as well. And I think it's
Yeah.
so valuable for people. But yeah, no, this is I think this is the side of the conversation that most salespeople don't hear. Um, and because of that, like I said, I didn't even know it existed. I didn't know it was a good role to be in. I didn't know anything like that. But I think for most people that are in survival mode or they're just kind of struggling to, it's not that they're not good at sales, although for some people it may be that they're in there and they shouldn't be. But I think there's a group of people that are good at selling and they're good enough that they make better money than they could in another role, like corporate, for example, or just a normal job.
Yeah.
So you can't like they can't see a way out, so they're stuck in it. And so they go, well, I have to just keep getting better at this. And they don't realize that like in reality, like CSMs are probably very similarly compensated as most, if not more, closers. Because the majority of closers, I think you've got data on this in general, but like really most closers are in like the 5 to 7K a month bracket, aren't they? The majority of closers.
Yes.
Obviously you have the people that are making more, and that's great, and they're the ones that are enjoying themselves, probably, and that's why they're doing it. But for that 5 to 10K bracket, which I'd say is probably like 60% of people, you can make that very easily in a CSM role from a get-go. Like you get a base
Yeah.
salary sometimes at that level. For some roles, it's like a 4 or 5K a month base and then commission on top from upsells and things like that. And I don't think people
Yeah.
realize that. It's like, and you're working less because you to get that 5, 10K a month in the role because you're burning out and because you're on offers that aren't great, you have to take like tens of calls in a week, like 30 calls booked in a week. Then you're on like a 50% show rate, so 15 turn up. And then you're probably on like a 10-20% close rate of those ones. Suddenly you're working 40, 50 hours a week and you're actually making like two, three sales. And then with CSMs, it's just like you've got a base. Your calls are normally like mine anyway, 30 minutes. Like that's what
Yeah.
I'm set. Like, and if I take like three or four of them in a day, it doesn't really change much. And that's like 2 hours. And I think that they don't even know that world exists, right?
Exactly. Like, I think it's really hard to do like 8 hours worth of calls as a CSM, because sales has to be bringing in like an immense amount in, and you
Yeah.
always have people like exiting the program, whatever. But like, I think, yeah, in terms of if you are looking for a role that actually gives you like that lifestyle freedom,
Mhm.
this I think is that role. Like I think closing was sold as that role, but as you like
Yeah.
everything you just said is like you can't have that level of freedom. Whereas like as a CSM, yeah, you're making like at minimum like that 5K a month usually. Whether it's through base pays or you make like a certain commission off of like the front end sales, but even then it's not like you're closing the front end sales. All you have to do is be available. And that's it, and they'll
Yeah.
assign you clients.
Yeah.
So as long as the closers are doing their jobs, you continue to make your good pay every single month. And then you just have to like coach people through their limiting beliefs. Like, you have to do like a lot of admin work and like sometimes handle some client escalations and things like that. But I think like those are just normal challenges that come with like any role, when you are dealing with like a customer facing relationship. Um, but all in all, like what I was saying earlier in this call was how I had that level of stability to be able to like explore like life.
Mhm.
Um that was because of the CSM role. And I think like it's so fun seeing now like closers like you who have gone through the program and like ended up in a CSM role where you are now, I'm watching you like also do the same thing, explore so many things out of life where
Mhm.
it's like you, I think it was like the video game course, and then you had like your books that you're writing, and then you have this offer that you're doing which is going to help more people. Like you just have more life to give, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And that in reality is why I was so excited to have this conversation because I've always had like big goals and big kind of dreams. But when I was stuck in the sales marketing cycle, it was just like, well, maybe I just need to buy this other course and then eventually I'll be able to do my dream. And then it's like, I know I need to buy a different one. And it's like I was just stuck in that. And then like within like weeks of getting into the CSM role. So for those that don't know, obviously I met with Cheyenne when she was building out her offer. She came to me for marketing research and then I ended up buying. um, and then she helped me get a role. I was very fortunate. I got a role within like 2 weeks. I think I was already in a role at that point, which, not saying everyone will get there that quick, but within like a couple of weeks of that, exactly that. I've written and published 2 books. I built a video game and I'm on the course. I've built my own offer. I've obviously started this podcast back up. I've got a few different things. I live a better like social lifestyle. I enjoy life. I'm happy. Like there's so much just changed when I was like it changed my whole view of success. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is like I didn't know that I was stuck in this like kind of sphere of success equals this. And that wasn't mine. That wasn't my goal. That wasn't my success. But I was like, but until I get there, I can't have a life. Like that's what it felt like. And I don't think
Yeah,
people realize
definitely.
that.
No, I agree. I think it's like you almost just keep holding off and you're like, I think it's also like a level, at least for myself, was always like I don't deserve to like do those other things yet, because it's kind of like in school when they're like you can't do this until you finish your homework. It was
Yeah.
like doing that to myself where it was like until I hit this milestone, I can't do other
Yeah.
things with my life. And that's so
Yeah.
not true. I think that's like a really unhealthy way to live, because I think the more that you do, like that is where the wealth and everything, like that's a byproduct of you living and exploring life, because you're
Yeah.
usually generally going to be better at those things that you actually enjoy. And it's all about like being able to compound and do like play the long game with things. I think a lot of people like, even for example, like you start and stop offers because and you can't stay consistent with things. So that's what I hear a lot of the time with closers. It's like either something happened with the funnel, or
Mm.
external factors, just so much that you can't control, or what it came down to was like that their own performance of not being able to close as consistently. But it's usually just like if we look at the root of that, it's not because you suddenly became a bad closer overnight. It's usually just because like you didn't have the same, I guess, like level of conviction, maybe, if that might be the right word for it, I don't know, just to kind of like maintain that level of sales.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think like in order to like be really good at things and be successful at things, you kind of just have to find those things that like you're naturally quite good at and that you align with. And I think for a lot of us that ended up in sales and things like that, it's because you were good with people. And like
Mm.
sales is not the only place where you can deal with people.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. I think sometimes I look at sales as like it's almost like a toxic relationship, like when, like yeah, but you don't know them, like like it could be really good and like things are going to
Yeah.
be better if only I do this or like,
Yes.
it's like
I
that
just
kind
need
of
to jump. I
feeling.
need to try out a different offer first.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. It's like, yeah, you kind of just keep jumping into red flags and being like, yeah, but this one will be different. And then a month later, you're like, oh, it's exactly the same. Right. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of people just get stuck in that. But I think what I'd love to ask, and I know we're kind of running up to the end of time, and I want to honor your time. I'd love to ask first how, now that you've kind of broke through this, now that you're building this out for other people as well, and now you're kind of fulfilling, I imagine, more of what your version of success is, how are things different like now compared to when you first joined the industry? Like, how are you, I don't know,
Oh,
living different, or how is your boundaries different, beliefs, whatever?
yeah, that's a great question. So now I don't think by numbers. So what I mean by that is like I don't set goals around numbers anymore. I set goals around like things that I want to do, because I had a realization that like money on its own has no value. Like
Mm.
it's literally a number in your bank account.
Yeah.
So until you like spend it, that is what gives it value. So I have a list of like things that I want to do with that money. And that is my motivating factor. And like that's what I put up as my goals list. It's not just like make $20,000 a month anymore. Um, and I find that that actually helps me achieve things a lot quicker, because I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm going to Spain in July, and I'm like, okay, cool. So I need to make sure that I have this, and this done in the business. And I need to close this many sales. And naturally, the numbers will come because I'm working
Mm.
towards that, a different milestone though. Um, so that's a huge like part of it. The other part of it is like before, I used to have like really high emotional highs and really low emotional
Mm.
lows. um
Yeah.
Whereas now I just kind of like, I feel like the dips are really like not as huge.
Mm.
Something will happen because that's life and that's business, and starting up a new offer is hard. But then I'm just like, okay, cool. Like that's done with. Like what do I want to do about that? I
Yeah.
think there's just like a certain level of like, cool. At the end of the day, I'm gonna get to go to sleep in my bed tonight, and I'm gonna love my life still, regardless of if there's like this fire happening in the business. So
Mm.
I would say those are
Yeah.
like the two biggest changes. It's not as like painful
Mm.
to do this and to run my business and to be in the high ticket space anymore.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. So, one more question. If there's someone listening and they feel trapped in, a story that's not theirs, a version of success that's not theirs, or kind of, they're kind of stuck in that mindset and limiting belief. What would you want to say to them to help them break through that?
I would say be patient with yourself because this is like what life is about. It's kind of like exploring yourself.
Mm,
You're not going to figure that out overnight, but what you can't do is keep doing the same thing over and over again. If you just like you said, like keep going from offer to offer, buying more trainings,
mm,
and you're gonna just get the same results. So you need to like break the pattern in some way. And you can always jump back into the pattern, honestly. If you really like want to, you can get back into it. But you know
mm,
how this story ends. Like you might as well explore a different storyline. And the other thing I'll say too is like be honest with yourself about what it is you want. And if you can't name like if you ask yourself, why do I have that value? And you don't have like a legitimate answer for it, chances
mm.
are it wasn't yours to begin with. So you have the opportunity to like pick and choose what you want to believe in and how you want to live your life. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. No, that's awesome. So I really appreciate you jumping on and going through this today. I could keep going for ages, but we probably should stop it at some point. Maybe we'll do another episode at some point. Where can people find out more about what you're doing? With obviously with Beyond the Sale and following your journey. I will put links in the description and things, but here's your chance to plug.
Awesome. So if you're curious about like CSM work in the high ticket space and you want to transition, I have a free playbook. I'll send you the link, Dave, and you can drop it below. And that will break down like more in detail about what the role is, how to get into those roles, etc. And then you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I try to keep all of those pretty updated on what's happening in the space. But yeah, thank you so much, Dave. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it was great. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Cheyenne. And I will, like I say, put everything in the description for everyone. And hopefully you're going to help more people.
Thank you.